Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. I'm back from the race world first, and I thought today it'd be fun to make a video looking at our final tier list slash raid composition we had together before the race world first, review if we were right, wrong, all that, and talk about, well, let's be honest, what we got wrong. Now, before we get into the video here, I do want to mention that I'm trying to push for 100k subs on YouTube this year. It's a goal I've had for a while. If you guys can find it in your heart to maybe sub to the channel or consider doing so if you haven't in the past, I'd love you eternally. Honestly, I love y'all regardless, but if you haven't, maybe consider it. But either way, I appreciate you watching. Now, this is indeed a video of me and watching me yapping before the race world first. This is like the general comp that I built, possibly roughly could maybe be the case before the race ended up like launching and stuff. And honestly, like barring a couple things, this square right here, being a bit off, I don't think this list is actually like incredibly that far off. There's a lot of balancing before the actual raid came out. There was no heroic week. A lot of balancing came into play. Some classes were buffed and then nerfed and then buffed when they meant to nerf them, and then buffed again and then nerfed, like BM Hunter. And things ended up being a bit different than what we thought it would be looking at raid testing and later PTR. So I have the actual raid comps from Liquid, Echo, and Method here. They played on their kills. We're going to scroll through those a little bit, talk about what they played, why they played it, and then build the comp here that was more or less like the comp that most guilds played during the race. Now, I will say, when it comes to this raid tiers composition, this was probably the most niche raid tier for damage profiles we've seen in a long time. Classes like Affliction Warlock, classes like Balance Druid, right, were really strong on certain encounters. Shadow Priest, for example, too, right, were really strong on certain encounters. You played 3 Boomkins, 3 or 4 on sticks. You played 4 Fire Mages on Gallywix. To be fair, they were good in general, but fire can't die, right? Well, they can, but you gotta die twice. Afflock, very good in certain spray cleave settings. Destro, similar extent also there. And without augmentation, spoilers ahead, this wasn't in the actual comp itself, being a thing at this tier due to how much it got nerfed, it opened the door for more roles to be played, and also that was good because you wanted those niche roles too. And Aug, while it can't amplify roles to have niche profiles that are good in certain settings, you just played more of that role in general. Balance Druid, Afflock, Destro Lock, Shadow Priest in certain settings, so on and so forth. So let's get into this here. Now, I do have Liquid, Echo, and Method here for what they played during the race with their comps. I'm not going to dig through every single boss kill here, but getting in the tanks, the number one thing to hit on, or really just mention, every single, well, top 3 guilds all played Prot Paladin, Prot Warrior. Prot Paladin, obviously strong, blessings, so on and so forth. It's good in general. They're pretty good on PTR. And when it comes to Prot Warrior, I mean, they really can't die. They put out an insane amount of damage. Oh, look, JPC's back in the guild for Liquid. Very cool. The man. Put out an insane amount of damage, a lot of execute damage, which if you look at the fights this tier, like, I mean, we assumed One Arm Bandit does have execute check, DPS check. Muggsy does at the same time as well, in a sense, and also Gallywix we assumed would, but in general, it's still solid to have around. Did a lot of damage. They were very hard, essentially, to kill this raid. They lived through so much, right? You even saw Scott carrying the bomb for Liquid on Gallywix, being the last bomb holder, because Prot Warrior, well, can't really die for the most part, right? Big damage, so on and so forth. Now, I ended up mentioning this hard to be a Prot Paladin and a Prot Warrior, or sorry, a Blood DK, but I mentioned Blood here because there's fights where you want AMZ if you can. Sure, it's nice. Grip could be a thing, but I remember in the tank section, I mentioned that it could be Prot Warrior as well. The damage is very good, and looking back on this in hindsight, it was likely better to just say, hey, you're going to play Prot Paladin and you're going to play Prot Warrior. Blood DK, once again, like unique healing profile, unique way of tanking the fights, unique, I guess, what do you call it, tank profile? I'll tank at this point. Utility solid too. You've got AMZ, you've got grips if need be, and obviously on a fight like Styx, for example, right? If you want that mass grip, I mean, you saw Liquid playing 1 Blood DK. Gifts ended up getting on his Blood DK, being pretty under-geared at that time, comparatively to others. I believe Echo had 2 Blood DKs, ended up playing 1 Blood DK and 1 Prot Paladin. Regardless, though, having those grips, when grip is good, it is exceptionally strong, whether it's mass grip or individual grips. So fights like that, yeah, having a Blood DK, having access to that is very strong. Besides that, though, when it was needed, you saw basically just Prot Warrior and Prot Paladin, so we're going to slot these in here. Now, as far as healers are concerned, Liquid ended up playing, obviously, Mistweaver this tier, very strong HPS, at the same time, very strong damage output. Mistweaver and Windwalker this tier being very strong when it comes to overall damage. You obviously have that disc priest in your raid. disc healing profile, disc in general being very strong, bring fort, power infusion, all the utility they bring, so on and so forth, very strong. Liquid ended up playing a mix of like disc, Mistweaver. You had Nick on that Resto Druid, which was crazy to see, but also, well, you want Mark somewhere. And with it being a pretty niche like raid tier profile wise, you really didn't see a whole lot of Feral, really any Feral at all, or not many Boomkins either. So we had one disc, Mistweaver, Resto, and to be fair, there were some fights that were 3 healed. You had one disc, one Mistweaver, one Resto. Some fights you 4 healed. And hey, you even 5 healed Muggsy because you had to meet the HPS or the HPS check. Also, with the fight being tuned a bit difficult in a sense when it comes to DPS wise, having a handful of Mistweavers in that can transcend out of those goon cages and also just do big damage was also unsurprisingly pretty helpful. Looking at their comp they played on Muggsy, you can see right here, 2 tanks, 5 healers, 3 Mistweavers, a Disc Priest, and a Resto Druid. When it comes to Echo, I think they might have played the same. I'm not actually sure. I didn't look a whole lot. Let me see here. Muggsy. Yeah, same thing basically. Once again, I mean, good HPS output, good HPS profile complementing Disc and Resto pretty well. And also the DPS output they have is just exceptionally strong, right? So we ended up saying in the video that I made, I'm going to just put 4 healers here for now. We can put one down below. Okay, hey, you'll play it if you want. In the video that I made, I talked about, I play this a bit longer here, playing Disc, Holy, Mistweaver, and Resto. For the most part, we pretty much got it right. I mean, Mistweaver is interchangeable with Holy. I think I mentioned Mistweaver in the first video we put out raid comp-wise, like 2 Mistweavers, 1 Disc, and 1 Resto Druid for that Mark buff, Fort, and then Mistweaver bringing Mystic Touch, obviously, and, you know, 1 copy, but just like raw HPS, raw DPS being pretty good. I'm going to say for the most part, we got it right, give or take. Once again, some fights were 3 healed, some were 4 healed, some were 5 healed. One was, but it is what it is. If you're like for a general building a raid comp of 4 healers here, I'd say we got it pretty right. When it comes to tanking, once again, maybe a little off with like Blood or Prot Paladin, but either way, both pretty solid here. Or Blood or Prot Warrior, yeah, so there's that. Now when it comes to damage, so I will say, I missed the mark here with augmentation. I'm surprised. I'll be real, I didn't think the augmentation nerfs were as impactful for raiding as they were Mythic Plus. They nerfed Closest Clutch Mates, which is basically an M plus only thing, right? Doesn't really have any relevance in raid settings. They nerfed Shifting Sands, which, yeah, there's raid relevance there, and they nerfed Breath of Aeons, which arguably has more relevance in M plus as well. I assumed you probably see 1 or 2 Augs as raid tier to amplify, you know, those niche damage profiles. But at the same time, you can just play more of those niche damage profiles, multiple Boomkins, multiple Aflocks, multiple Destros, multiple whatever you need, because they're, with the tuning that Aug had, just better than playing a class that half amplifies them, right? Aug didn't bring enough to the table through its overall utility plus amplification value than just bringing another X, Y, Z based on, you know, raid composition and what you needed with those niche profiles. So if we jump into this, I guess looking at what guilds played here, obviously, you have your raid buffs, right? You saw basically a Havoc Demon Hunter every single fight. So we can just toss them in here. We can toss your raid buffs in here, right? Havoc Demon Hunter, got one there. Toss this here. You saw rogues being played on most fights this tier. Not every single fight. Rogue was not played on Stick Spunk Chunker because a lot of the damage, most of the damage in that fight is environmental damage. And when it comes to Trophic Poison, it doesn't affect environmental damage. It is, you know, I think it's 3 or 3.6 with poisons less or whatever. When it's from damage the boss does, essentially. You've got burning trash piles and bombs exploding, all kind of stuff. Didn't really actually have a whole lot of relevancy when it came to sticks. So you actually didn't see a rogue played for sticks from Liquid. I don't know if Echo played one at all or not. They opted to not play a rogue here either, yeah. So, I mean, for the most part, I'll throw one in here. I saw a mix of Assassination and Subtlety this tier. I'm just going to throw a Subtlety in here, how would be the case. But there was one rogue across the board on basically every fight, except for the one where, you know, you didn't have a Trophic being incredibly relevant. So we'll still throw them in. When it comes to the raid comp thing, we had one on here also, which is right there. Sub, you know, there's that. Then when it comes to, let's see, what do we have next here? Let's just go down the line, honestly. We have our Demon Hunter in for our Chaos brand, we're that. So you have Balanced Druid and Feral Druid. Now, I thought you'd see some Feral Druids this patch. I didn't put them in the list here, but I put them in like the maybe section and possibly being slotted in over a Balanced Druid if the fight wanted like Feral's profile. But Feral's profile is not incredibly niche comparatively to Balance Druid. Balance brings that huge Starfall cleave. You saw it on Styx, right? When Liquid ended up killing that, all the guilds played multiple Boomkins. Liquid played 3 Boomkins, 3 Shadow Priest. Echo played 3 Boomkins, 3 Shadow Priest, right? So those niche damage profiles that could cleave the actual territorial bombshells out were really, really good, and you saw those coming out of those Boomkins, those Shadow Priests. Method ended up playing, what do we have here? Let's see. They ended up playing, is this Styx? It is. 3 Boomkins and 3 Shadow Priest. Yeah, so there you go. Once again, those niche profiles are good. And you could say, oh yeah, maybe just play an Augmentation Evoker to amp those profiles. What's better than an Augmentation Evoker? Second Boomkin. Third Boomkin with the nerfs that hit Aug. So I'm gonna put Boomkin and Feral down here. Like they saw some play, but it was niche play. And when it came to other fights like Gallywix, there's no Boomkin here. When it came to Mugsy, there's no Boomkin here. Your Mark of the Wild buff is through Nick, playing that Resto Druid, who typically just plays a priest anyways, right? Even though he played Boomkin, I believe, back in the day, there really weren't a whole lot of Boomkins this raid tier, or Ferals, right? Even on like One Arm Bandit, where you thought maybe we get some cleave value out of Starfall, you just played Aflox, Shadow Priest. Once again, niche profile. This is like airing back to Coven of Shivara from Antorus. Like this class stack, and you haven't seen this in a very long time. Honestly, it's sort of cool, but so yeah, when it comes to Druid, you really didn't see a whole lot this tier. So I'm going to throw both of these down here. And I'm going to say for the most part, we sort of got it wrong. I assume we'd see at least a balance or a Feral. If you didn't play Resto Druid, maybe you played Disc Holy Double Mistweaver, you can make that swap too. We were close-ish, but I mean, I might have missed the mark a bit there. I assume you might see a Feral on certain fights, but in the end, the profile they bring is not exceptionally strong in the niche settings that, you know, needed this tier when it came to a world first composition. When it comes to Evoker, listen, we missed the mark on Aug. It was sort of a sleeper pick. I thought we'd end up seeing Augs as raid tier. I did, to amplify profiles again, but we just didn't. They weren't good enough, even with the other utility they bring with blistering scales, so on and so forth, you know, all that, right? Didn't really see many. However, what we did see a pretty decent bit of was Devastation Evoker, so we'll throw one in here. Now, there were, I think, a fight or two where Devastation was not played this tier. He ended up playing it here. This was Sang on Zapdos, right? Looking at One Arm Bandit. When it came to Mugsy, ended up playing one here as well. I think it was an earlier fight where they didn't end up playing one. It might have been Sprocket Monger, you probably played one. Yeah, I think they didn't play an Evoker on an early fight somewhere. It might have been like Cauldron, possibly. Maybe. But for the most part, you had one Evoker in. Not Prez, not Augmentation, but Devastation. Obviously, Time Spiral. If you can get value out of Time Spiral on certain fights, maybe Sprocket Monger, maybe like Mugsy at certain points. Obviously, a very good ability to have. Blessing of the Bronze, sort of whatever, honestly. Source Magic, good. The healer movement thing, I forgot what it's called. Time Distortion, whatever it is, also very solid there if you can get that in the raid somewhere. And for the most part, you saw one in Devastation. Sang, obviously playing that Lizard Army. Good to see. I think it's pretty much the same across Echo as well. Yeah, one here on Gallywix, Sprocket Monger, obviously good times for our fight. Saw two here actually, so there you go. So yeah, I think for the most part we had like, we didn't have Devin here. We had Aug, this Lizard somewhere, right? So probably got that pretty wrong on the Aug end of the spectrum, but we will throw Devin here. It's like, hey, you know, there's that. When it comes to Hunter, so Hunter was a weird one this tier. Obviously, there's no marks or survival. I don't think anybody played these during the race. I could be wrong. But we had 2 BM Hunters in our comp here of one of the classes being stacked. And it's interesting because BM Hunter went through a lot. I think this video was made right around the time when they got like their tier set nerfs, then an aura buff to compensate, which was like a huge buff. And then Blizzard nerfed them a day later, but they were still significantly buffed. I think they got nerfed a 3rd time. And they were still solid, but I think this video was made in between then, but I'm not 100%. This raid tier, niche profiles, a lot of spread cleave, like the council-based cleave settings, One Arm Bandit, Mugsy in a sense, right? Or that BM profile can't necessarily excel as much as like the stat cleave, you know, meat grinder-esque profile they have, but they are ranged, very mobile. A fight like Styx, I expected to see a handful of BMs in if you could make it work, but the problem was that when it came to Styx, the tuning of Styx, and even like Sprocket Monger and things, was just so high, you really didn't see much. You saw Malarcus playing that BM Hunter for basically every fight, and I don't believe there was a fight they even played 2 Hunters on. I'm pretty sure it was just 1 across the board. Cauldron also saying, oh, actually, here we have 2. We have 2 Hunters in on Cauldron. My mistake. A bit lower gearing wise, but there is that regardless. Just make sure this is the right. Okay, we're good. The right sort there. Vexy is sort of whatever, honestly. 1 BM here. So, but it was a class I expected to see stacked on basically every fight for how strong they were damage wise. Similar to what Mage was this tier. I mean, they were stacked for other reasons in a sense, but like if you're gonna stack a universal class, I assumed it would be like Hunter or it would be Warrior. This tier, right? So we got it right in a sense where there's going to be a BM in the raid, but we thought there'd be 2, and there only ended up being 1 this raid tier. So Hunter's Mark also as well being like it's fine on certain fights, but on like council-based fights like Silken Court last year, not that great. There's 2 targets. So not amazing, not terrible. Didn't like totally miss the mark, but didn't really like, hit it exceptionally well either. So there's that. But either way, there was a BM in the raid. So if you're a BM fan, hey, well, there you go. No marks or survival, I don't believe at this point. Maybe some niche thing somewhere, but I don't believe I saw anything there. Mage. Liz's favorite. So I play a Warlock. It's like when you're the only child and then your parents have a second child like 8 years later and you're just cast out to the side. You're like on your own now. Yeah, I'm not saying this is anything happened to me, but just in general, mages are the new favorite from Blizzard. Mages are the new favorite for the past few expansions. Jokes aside, though, I heard a bit about Arcane being possibly the raid spec, like the week before the raid came out, or whatever. Apparently, it's really bad now. Didn't see any play in the raid. Didn't see much Frost either. But what we did see was a decent bit of Fire Mages this raid tier. Fire Mage is one of the specs that was stacked a bit as well, which we had one on the actual raid comp here. But I mean, going through the fights here, we have Mugsy, 3 Fire Mages. To be fair, they could blink, alter displacement to cleave the mobs in the goon cages. Very good there. Galliwix, you played 4 because they have cheat deaths. So they have everything utility-wise. So they can carry the bombs and die and not die. One-Armed Bandit, you saw 2, even where you had like 3 Aflocks and still 2 Fire Mages being here. You can go through more and more. Sprocketmonger, 2 fire for most of the raid tier, being exceptionally strong. Mage brings incredible utility. Fire is just solid damage-wise. Not melting the world, but, still pretty good when it comes to overall damage and the profile they bring. Utility is very strong. Basically playing 2 Fire Mages, honestly, every single fight this tier. So comparatively to what we had 2 Hunters here, but ended up being double Mage. So hey, that's that. Basically Fire though. So sort of missed the mark, sort of got out there a little bit. We knew there'd be Mages in the raid somewhere, but not. We didn't expect there to be 4 Mages on Galliwix, but at the same time, mechanics, and it happens, right? Now, when it comes to Windwalker, I would say this is likely the other class that we sort of missed the mark on this tier. Windwalker, now, they were strong in PTR testing, in single target. There's a lot of talk about them being better in M+ and things, but like, I wasn't super high on them in M+ tier list because they're capped at like, I believe 5 for SPK. And their damage in single target was strong, but I really didn't see any raid testing. Didn't see any in PTR towards the end either. And Liquid, comparatively to Echo and Method, were very, very high on Windwalker this tier, heading into Liberation of Undermine, and that paid off. I mean, looking at Chrome King Galliwix, you ended up playing only 1 from Echo, but Liquid ended up playing 3 on Galliwix, right? Their single target is exceptionally strong. They have all the monk utility, whatever you need in the world, right? You can transcend out of the goon cages as well when it came to Mugsy right here, which is also, pretty solid in the first place. Only played 2 here, but still can transcend out of the cages if need be. They were very, very strong single target wise. If there's going to be a class that gets tuned a bit this next week or so, which I expect to happen probably on Friday, they might end up knocking down Windwalker a little bit. But we'll see where it goes. I don't think they're like utterly insane to the point where they need to be nerfed like a crazy amount. But yeah, class tuning, we'll see where that goes. Windwalker and Fire, I would say overall, were the 2 specs, barring niche profiles, where you had like 3 Boomkins or had like 3 Shadow Priests on sticks and, fights like One-Armed Bandit, were the classes that were stacked more so was put over here, comparatively to, what we thought it would be, which was more like Warrior, which I had somewhere in this list somewhere. I had it somewhere in here. 2 Warriors and 2, I think I had 2 Warriors and 2 BMs. It ended up being Windwalker and Mage. We had them on the list here. We only had 1 Fire and 1 Windwalker, comparatively to 2 BM and 2 Arms. So there's that. Now, at the same time, they did end up playing 1 Warrior this tier on basically all fights. I believe they also had more ready to go if need be, but, profiles didn't really dictate as much, and that's that. So we'll get to them in a minute, though. When it comes to Paladin, obviously you're playing Holy, which is not very good, unsurprisingly. Ret. So Retribution Paladin, I can tell you right now, was destroying. There was definitely a plan to play multiple Rets this tier. There were a couple bugs. I believe there were bugs. I'm not totally sure. I don't know what's going on exactly, but there are a couple bugs with Ret that made them exceptionally strong, stronger than Windwalker was by a pretty good bit. In leading up to the actual raid launch, like 2 days before, 1 day before, guilds were very high on Ret Paladin, but bug fixes came in, I believe, Monday afternoon. I could be wrong, which knocked Ret way down. Like, you would have seen Ret stacked in the sense that Windwalker was, if not more. You would have seen multiple Rets. I'm pretty sure 2 to 3 in every fight this raid tier, as long as you could accommodate them, because they were exceptionally strong. With the fixes coming in, I don't think they were nerfs, I think they were just bug fixes. It's unfortunately knocked Ret down that list a good bit to where you really didn't see it at all. You have Paladin for blessings if you needed, so on and so forth. The option was there, but like I said, just wasn't really needed. Not a whole lot of like stacked cleave in general. If they weren't excelling at single target, then what's the reason in bringing one, right? You saw it here, to be fair. Passion Pete on Vexy, but on a fight like Cauldron or a fight like Reverb, like you can get stack cleave with them in melee when the barrel spawn on Reverb, but you can also just bring, Destro Locks and Shadow Priest and things and kill the bombs too, right? So unfortunately, if you're a Rep Paladin, they're still good now. Also as well on retail, you can definitely play them, but when it came to a World First setting, they were very, very close. But the day before the race, unfortunately, ended up in a bit of an odd spot. Sorry, stat. Also, I realized I left out Frost and Unholy here. Didn't really see any play. Sorry. I believe Liquid played on Unholy DK. I think a little bit on Styx in early polls. I think they were playing 2 Blood DKs and Unholy DK or at some point in Prog on Styx, but they went back to the Blood DK Prop Paladin combo later on. They killed it with. But DK just wasn't exceptionally strong this tier. That Frost breath profile wasn't really needed. I don't think they're even playing Syndragosa right now, from what I understand. I could be wrong, but wasn't really needed this raid tier. Tuning was I believe Unholy is really good in M plus now if you have a lot of AoE, similar to how Destro is, but didn't see a whole lot of play this tier. And unfortunately, Atlas, love Atlas, but he came in and tanked for a little bit on his Blood DK, and then I saw him playing ping pong most of the race, watching the guys raid. Bit unfortunate, but I'm a Warlock. I know how it is to be one and done in the raid, but memes aside, moving on from there. So we are in the Shadow Priest territory. Shadow Priest was hard to narrow down when it came to building a comp this raid tier, because in some places you heard they were insane, really good. Sometimes they were not good. Sometimes they were just this and that. Things were changing. They were getting buffed and nerfed. I couldn't even get a clear answer on it. Maybe some people had him in S tier and M plus. Some had him in B tier, and it was the same time frame. People making tier lists. Oh, they're S plus. They're gonna be meta. Oh, they're B minus. Are terrible. Shadow was an anomaly this raid tier. Now you ended up seeing a lot of them played on fights like One Arm Bandit. You've got Tobo and Sinazard here, right? Playing on Sprocketmonger. You had 2 in. You have 3 here. Pissloo, Peter Griffin, and Sinazard on One Arm Bandit alongside 3 Aflocks, right? Obviously, dot-based cleave, council-based fight, ad spawning in, Twist of Fate, funneling the boss a bit, very good. Also, execute damage there. Twist of Fate, boss is low, One Arm Bandit. But when it came to a fight like Muggsy, didn't see any here because you couldn't get out of the cages easily. You couldn't teleport, transcend, all that, like basically everybody else here could, right? When it came to Gallywix, you ended up seeing also only 1 Shadow Priest here. It sort of felt like they were very similar to Warlocks. When you had the profile that Shadow could bring, when it was good on the fight, it was good. You brought 3 Shadow Priest on Styx. You brought 3 Boomkins here, right? When the damage profile excelled this tier of these classes, it was very good. We talked about that a lot going into this tier. Also, hey, when Locke's good this tier on certain fights with Destro AF, it's gonna be very good. But in general, on fights like Sprocketmonger, where it's single target based, you're going to play 1. You're last in the meters because tuning's not very good. So this is a niche profile raid tier, right? So when it came to the actual list here, we had 1 Shadow in. I think putting 1 Shadow is fine. I think that's relatively accurate, but we also had them, I think, down here somewhere at the end, talking about playing multiple Shadow Priests. You can throw them down here in they're stackable category with balance. Balance Shadow. Get rid of these. So on and so forth, right? You could definitely stack these profile-wise if you wanted, but Shadow had that 1 raid slot for the most of the time, but not, it wasn't 2 Fire Mages, 2 Windwalkers. So, and then the last little bit here, obviously you have Rogan, we had Subtlety, Assassination, whatever. They're there, is what it is. I believe Preach said Echo debated selling the World Second Kill because their Rogue was, I believe, a bit sick. It was going to step out that day before they killed it. They were going to try and buy or find a Rogue one to buy a World Second for a Trophic in the fight. And honestly, it was just really easy to kill anyways. But 1 Rogue this tier, didn't see him stacked or anything. It's whatever, it is what it is. When it comes to Shaman, Elemental had some bugs that popped up, I think, week 1 of the patch, where they were doing 18% less damage or whatever, I think, compared to everybody else, where their tuning was, right? They were fixed a couple days later. Honestly, they're good in M+. I didn't really see a world where you could fit in multiple Shamans in this raid comp list. We had 1 Enhance in, and honestly, it's what it ended up being. You've got Impact here playing Enhance on basically every fight. right? Not a whole lot really changed. Someone's banging on my door. Not a whole lot really changing here. Even when it comes to Echo, you just see one enhance, one enhance, one enhance. Enhance and Ellie both bring Sky Fury. It's fine, but like enhance is just overall just better this tier. I do think Ellie is still good though, and can be played like in a raid comp now for sure. But yeah, it was basically just one enhance, one and done. So we got that right for the most part. Not that bad. Moving on from there, once again, Ellie sort of whatever. Warlock is interesting. Warlock is one of the specs. We'll put AF and Destro here. That like when you're playing one Warlock, right? It's a mix of, I'm gonna put Destro here. It's AF, Destro, Demo, whatever. I think AF's doing better now and Heroic and stuff, but you know, Heroic. You're gonna play a Warlock on basically every fight. There have been a couple fights in the past, like the first boss of Nerebar Palace. TSG didn't need loot. They didn't play him. That was the reason why. They didn't suck that badly. We weren't great, but he didn't need loot. That's why I didn't play him. You didn't need Soulstone there. You died and walked back, right? The last time Lock wasn't played was Kurog Grim Totem, where it was actually just really undertuned. To be fair, I believe Echo killed it for World's second with a Destro lock-in. By the way, you played one Lock this tier, but Lock's also in a spot of where when the profile was good, Like you played 3 AF locks on One Arm Bandit. You played 2 on Muggsy, which is actually a pretty decent lock fight. I didn't think it would be that good. You can also just teleport out of the goon cages as well. You played 3 on One Arm Bandit. AF being very strong here. And cleave things down with your tier set spreading UAs to ads, CDYs, all that stuff. But when it came to like single target fights without like the damage profile excelling, like on One Arm Bandit or Muggsy in a sense, you just played 1. Just our single target, it's not very good, and we're clunky in certain areas. You played 1. You played Demo here. When it came to Gallywix, you played 1. THG played AF here. I think Destro's probably better, maybe. We'll see where it goes with like later Prog and all that. You played 1. That was it. This fight wasn't even optimized. He just died. It was undertuned, obviously, right? But at the same time, on Reverb, when you wanted to kill those barrels that spawned in, 2 Destros can crank things down with Havoc Cleave, right? You played 2 Destros, 3 Shadow Priests, 2 Fire Mages. There you go. Cauldron, only 1 lock here. But to clarify, the earlier fights are going to die super easy in a world first setting. You're optimizing what you think is going to be part of your comp, possibly later on in the raid tier for gear as well, right? So is lock good here? Yes. But I mean, did you need to play multiples? Probably not. Or whatever kind of fight, right? So when lock was good on the fights that wanted its profile, it was very, very good. But the fights that went on 1 lock on, they're pretty much last in the meters. That's how it is. It's honestly what we expected this raid tier. Like I said, every raid tier. I didn't sandbag on Max's list. Told you how it was. So, but they're in the stackable category here, right? So, and when it comes to warrior, so honestly, there is basically just 1 warrior every fight. I mean, I had actually double arms here, arms Fury, whatever it was. I think Fury took a bit of a nerf for execute damage a few days before the raid came out. You were playing Prot Warrior, obviously, but like you just had Wolf Disco playing warrior, like 1 on most fights. Honestly, he wasn't even in for One Arm Bandit. He was in for, I thought he was in for Galley. He actually wasn't. Yeah, so you've got, whatever this is. Muggsy right here. You're playing an arms warrior, Sprocket Monger, Fury Warrior. When it comes to Stickspunk Junker, nothing. Obviously, damage profiles are stacked a good bit here. To a similar extent, you had a lot of things being stacked here as well. When it came to, you know, like One Arm Bandit, where you didn't have a warrior in here also. When it came to Echo, to a similar extent, One Arm Bandit, no warrior. When it came to Gallywix, they played 2 warriors here, both playing Fury. So I guess there's like some relevancy to double stack in there, but they played 2 Fury Warriors versus 1 Windwalker. Look, we played 3 Windwalkers in this fight, right? Windwalker was better than Warrior this raid tier. So I don't think we missed the mark there totally. I'll just throw Fury in here. I don't think we missed the mark totally by saying double Warrior, but there was definitely like more Windwalkers comparatively to more Warriors this tier. And also we should have this stackable down here as well because they were just really good. Some fights you even played 3 on. So when it comes to the last 2 slots, I mean, like we talked about this raid tier, like this is probably what you saw more or less is like the general, we're going to play this on most fights. And then we're going to put like, we want like, I don't know, you want Boomkins profiles. You can throw a couple Boomkins in here, throw a couple Balanced Druids in, take the Warrior out for a 3rd Druid, take a Windwalker out if you really wanted a 2nd Shadow Priest or a 3rd Shadow Priest for sticks, right? Pulling up this comp again, right? Like that's what you did, more or less, right? You have no Warriors here. You got 3 Shadows, 3 Boomkins, 1 Demo Lock, and you know, you filled them with 2 Mages, 1 BM, 1 Enhance, or a Paladin for whatever, so on and so forth, right? So I think for the most part, this raid tier, like we didn't, I don't know what I had here. I had double Windwalker, but yeah, I think for the most part, this raid tier, We really didn't miss the mark a whole lot, except for the double augmentation. Oh, I even mentioned it here later on in the video. The double augmentation call, which, yeah, okay, we were a little off on. It happens. You know, I didn't think Aug's nerfs would be as felt in Raid as they were in M+, comparatively. But, I mean, we sort of hit the mark on, like, 1 enhance, 1 sub, 2 fire mages, 1 lock, so on and so forth. But when it comes to this raid tier, again, you had a lot of flexibility when it came to what you wanted to bring. A lot of niche profiles you saw. I mean, on half the fights, Cauldron, Styx, One Arm Bandit, Mugs, needing teleports, and Gallywix was just a toss up. Gallywix is a free end boss, right? But without augmentation being in the raid, I mean, if you're playing Augs here, the comp would probably be something like this. You'd play just, what did I have here? Destro. You played something like this. If Aug was good this tier, you probably have this, maybe like no dev, maybe 1 dev, who knows, and probably like second or third something here, right? You know, but without Aug being part of like the comp, like the meta or what was best in the race world first, you had the option of flexibility to play 3 or 4 fire mages on Gallywix, to play 3 Windwalkers on certain fights, to play 3 Warlocks or 3 Shadow Priests or 3 Boomkins, right? That's really cool. You know, raid buffs are a thing this raid tier, but you're able to accommodate them. The big ones, Mystic Touch, Chaos Brand, Mark, Fort, all that kind of stuff, right? Sky Fury. And the ones that aren't as needed, like Mark of the Wild or Blessing of the Bronze, like they're still good, and you're able to fit them in too, but there's flexibility without Aug being crammed into every setting. So this is not like an Aug hating video either, but you know, I'd say for the most part, comparing like what things ended up being to what we thought, I'd give myself like a B-. Maybe I'm being a little forgiving there, but yeah, that's that. So, hey, the raid was fun. Unfortunately, Galley was pretty undertuned, and things sort of ended up just being a bit of a wash. But either way, it was fun. And it's honestly, like, looking at what we saw here, on a lot of fights, we had like 3 Windwalkers in, or you know, double Warlock, 3 Shadow Priests. It was cool seeing classes being stacked again. It's not a world where you're playing 10, 14 Warlocks on Unat, like I think Method did when they killed it back in the day, because raid buff's still a thing, but it was cool to see. Honestly, seeing those niche damage profiles like Boomkin, like Aflock, like Destro Lock, like whatever, actually played out in a raid setting. I think this raid's fight design was actually pretty good, but the tuning was a good bit off. So hopefully next year, if things, when that patch comes out, PTR is already going for 0.15 and 0.17, tuning will be a little better, and we can once again see more niche damage profiles maybe being stacked to a certain extent in whatever raid 11.2 brings. So thanks for watching, guys. Wraps it up, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. I thought it'd be a fun one to make, looking back at our tier list / raid comp, all that. Might make one for M+ too, the next few days and see where it goes. But hopefully you all enjoyed it. It was fun. So, like I said, I obviously am back from the race world first. THE did sign the picture. You can see it right there. It's very cool. It has indeed made it to Cali and back, and I'm excited. A lot of content coming on the line for you guys. My guild's rating, we're working on Sprocket Monger right now. Might do a quick recap video on like where I'm at gearing wise and stuff too, because I've been gone for a few weeks. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys want any week wars or add-ons or profiles or anything, what is my hair? My website up here, as well as down below in the description, as well as Twitch links, all that kind of stuff. Week wars, profiles, you can get them all for free if y'all want any of that. And at the same time, a massive thank you to my patrons, for all supporters on Patreon. Like every video, thank y'all a million times for all of it. I greatly appreciate it. Thank y'all so much. And yeah, I appreciate it. So I can mention at the start of the video as well, we are indeed pushing for 100k subs this year on YouTube, which if we get it, phenomenal. If we don't, it's okay either way. But if you guys aren't subbed to the channel and wouldn't mind maybe considering doing so, or even just contemplating it, hey, you know, I'd appreciate it. Regardless, hey, if you hate me, it's okay too. Wouldn't be the first, wouldn't be the last. So, but nah, jokes aside, much love. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you made it this far, well, I really appreciate it. And I will catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.